The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Harrison Technologies, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that dominated the Seattle skyline. Marcus Harrison stood in his corner office on the 45th floor, surveying his empire with the satisfaction of a man who had built something extraordinary from nothing. At 52, he was worth $3 billion, and he never let anyone forget it. The intercom buzzed. His assistant, Jennifer, spoke in her usual crisp tone. "Mr. Harrison, the quarterly meeting with the engineering team is in 10 minutes. Marcus adjusted his Italian silk tie and grabbed the leather portfolio from his desk. He had been waiting for this meeting. For 6 months, his top engineers had been working on a solution to a critical problem with the company's new water purification system. The device was meant to revolutionize access to clean water in developing countries, but there was a flaw in the filtration mechanism that caused it to clog after just 3 days of use. 12 of the brightest engineers in the country had been working around the clock to fix it. As he walked through the corridors toward the conference room, Marcus passed Maria Santos, one of the night shift cleaning staff. She was on her knees, scrubbing at a stubborn stain on the carpet near the elevator bank. Her gray uniform was worn but clean, and her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was 43 years old, though hard work had aged her beyond her years. Her hands were rough and calloused from years of cleaning, scrubbing, and polishing. "Maria, what are you still doing here?" Marcus said, not bothering to stop walking. "Your shift ended 2 hours ago." Maria looked up, startled. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison. I am almost finished. This stain, it is very difficult." Marcus glanced at his watch impatiently. "You have been scrubbing that same spot for 3 days. If you cannot clean properly, maybe we need to find someone who can." Maria's face flushed, but she kept her voice steady. "I am sorry, Mr. Harrison. The cleaning solution, it does not work well on this type of stain. I have tried different methods." "Then try harder," Marcus said dismissively. "That is what we pay you for." He continued walking, leaving Maria kneeling on the floor behind him. Maria watched him go, feeling the familiar sting of being invisible, of being dismissed. She had felt it so many times in her life. When she first arrived in America 15 years ago, she spoke almost no English. She had taken any job she could find, working at restaurants, cleaning houses, doing laundry. She sent most of her money back home to Guatemala, where her mother was raising Maria's 3 younger siblings after their father had died in a construction accident. She had dreams once. In her village, she had been known as the girl who could fix anything. When the school's water pump broke, Maria figured out how to repair it with spare parts and wire. When the church bell stopped ringing, she climbed up and adjusted the mechanism until it worked again. Her teachers told her she was smart, that she should study engineering. But there was no money for school, and then her father died, and Maria had to become the provider. So she came to America, leaving behind everything familiar, chasing the promise of a better life. 15 years later, she was still cleaning other people's offices, still sending money home, still invisible to people like Mr. Harrison. But Maria did not complain. She had learned long ago that complaining changed nothing. She went back to scrubbing the stain, trying a new approach she had thought of. She mixed a small amount of white vinegar with the cleaning solution and scrubbed in circular motions instead of back and forth. Slowly, very slowly, the stain began to lift. In the conference room, the 12 engineers were already seated around the massive mahogany table. Charts and diagrams covered the walls, and laptop computers glowed with complex data streams. The team leader, Dr. Robert Chen, stood at the head of the table, looking exhausted. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his normally neat appearance was rumpled. His shirt was wrinkled, and he had not shaved in 2 days. The pressure was getting to all of them. "Good morning, gentlemen," Marcus said as he took his seat. I trust you have good news for me." Dr. Chen cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Harrison, we have made significant progress, but I am afraid we have not yet found a complete solution to the clogging problem." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. 6 months, Robert. 6 months and 12 brilliant minds. And you are telling me you still cannot fix a simple filter? "With respect, sir, it is not a simple problem," Dr. Chen said carefully. "The issue is that organic particles in contaminated water are binding with the membrane in ways we did not anticipate. We have tried 17 different approaches. We have tested different membrane materials, different pore sizes, different chemical treatments. Nothing has worked for more than a few days of continuous operation." Another engineer, James Wu, spoke up. "The problem is that when we make the filter fine enough to catch all contaminants, it clogs too quickly. When we make it coarser, it lets through particles that make the water unsafe. We have tried nanocoatings to prevent adhesion, but they degrade too quickly. We have tried pre-filtration stages, but they add too much complexity and cost." A third engineer, Sarah Mitchell, added, "We have consulted with experts from MIT and Stanford. We have run thousands of simulations. The physics of the problem are just incredibly challenging. The particles are sticky and irregular in shape, and they form matrices that block flow paths." Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making several of the engineers jump. "I did not build this company by accepting excuses. We have investors waiting, contracts pending, and people in Africa and Asia who need this technology. Do you understand what is at stake here? We have taken deposits on 50,000 units. We have contracts with NGOs and government agencies. We have a press conference scheduled in 3 weeks to announce the production launch. Find a solution, or I will find engineers who can." The room fell silent. Several of the engineers looked down at the table, defeated. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "We will keep working, Mr. Harrison. We are exploring some new approaches with cross-flow filtration and ultrasonic agitation." "You have 2 weeks, Marcus said coldly. 2 weeks, or this project is canceled and you can all update your resumes. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, sir," the engineers murmured in unison. Marcus stood abruptly. "I want daily updates. No more excuses, only results. And I want to see actual working prototypes, not just theories and simulations." He grabbed his portfolio and left the room, his footsteps echoing in the hallway. Behind him, the engineer sat in stunned silence. Finally, James Wu spoke. 2 weeks is impossible. We have been working on this for 6 months with no breakthrough. What does he expect us to do? Pull a miracle out of thin air?" "We will have to try even harder," Dr. Chen said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Let us get back to the lab. Maybe if we try a combination approach, using both chemical and mechanical pretreatment. Or maybe we can look at pulsed flow systems." "It will not work," Sarah Mitchell said quietly. "We have already explored every reasonable avenue. The fundamental problem is that any filter fine enough to remove pathogens will eventually clog when exposed to highly contaminated water. That is just physics." "Then we change the physics," Dr. Chen said firmly. "We change the approach. We think outside the box. Because if we do not, we are all going to be looking for new jobs." They filed out of the conference room, each lost in their own thoughts about the seemingly impossible task ahead. As Marcus left the conference room, he was seething with frustration. He had invested $20 million in this water purification project, and it was turning into a disaster. He thought about the press conference he had given a year ago, announcing the revolutionary new technology that would bring clean water to millions. He thought about the articles in Forbes and Wired praising his humanitarian vision. And he thought about how foolish he would look if the project failed. More than that, he thought about the investors who had put money into the project based on his promises. He thought about the NGOs that were counting on these devices to deploy in refugee camps and disaster zones. He thought about the villages in Africa and Asia that had been promised clean water. The failure would not just be embarrassing, it would be devastating. He took the elevator down to the research and development floor, where several prototype units were set up for testing. The R&D lab was a sprawling space filled with equipment, testing stations, and rows of the purification devices in various stages of assembly. The walls were lined with whiteboards covered in equations and diagrams. Tables held microscopes, spectrometers, and various testing equipment. Marcus walked among the prototypes, examining the sleek white cylinders that were supposed to be his company's next breakthrough product. Each unit was about the size of a large thermos, designed to be portable and easy to use in remote areas without electricity. The design was elegant and simple. Water went in the top, passed through the filtration membrane, and came out the bottom, clean and safe to drink. At least, that was the theory. At one of the testing stations, a unit was running, filtering water from a tank filled with deliberately contaminated samples. The water in the tank was murky brown, filled with sediment, bacteria, and organic matter, to simulate the worst conditions the device might encounter in the field. Marcus watched as the flow rate gradually decreased, the filter beginning to clog yet again. The clear plastic chamber allowed him to see the filter membrane slowly turning brown as particles accumulated on its surface. He picked up the device and shook it in frustration, as if the physical action might somehow reveal the solution his engineers could not find. Water sloshed inside, but nothing changed. The flow rate continued to decrease. $20 million, he muttered to himself. $20 million in 6 months, and we are no closer to a solution than when we started? Maybe I should just cut my losses and cancel the whole thing. "Mr. Harrison?" a tentative voice said from behind him. Marcus turned to see Maria standing in the doorway of the lab, pushing her cleaning cart loaded with supplies, mops, and trash bags. "What are you doing here? This is a restricted area." "I am sorry, Mr. Harrison. I clean this floor on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I did not mean to disturb you. Should I come back later?" Marcus waved his hand impatiently. "Fine. Just stay out of my way and do not touch anything. Everything in here is expensive and important. Some of these prototypes cost $50,000 each." "Yes, sir," Maria said quietly, and began cleaning in the far corner of the lab, trying to make herself as invisible as possible. Marcus continued to brood over the failed filtration system. He spent another hour examining the prototypes, reading through technical reports on the testing station computer, and growing increasingly angry at the lack of progress. He read about membrane permeability, particle size distribution, and fluid dynamics. It all seemed so complicated, so impossibly complex. He pulled up the financial projections on his tablet. If they could launch the product on schedule, Harrison Technologies would become the leading provider of portable water purification systems in the world. The profit potential was enormous, but more than that, it would cement his legacy as a tech entrepreneur who used business to solve real humanitarian problems. But if the project failed, he would lose not just the $20 million in development costs, but potentially much more in canceled contracts and damaged reputation. Finally, he stormed out of the lab, muttering about incompetent engineers and wasted money, leaving Maria alone with her mop and bucket. Maria continued her work methodically, cleaning the floors, wiping down surfaces, and emptying trash bins. She had been cleaning this lab for 3 years, and she knew every corner of it. She had seen the engineers working late into the night, had heard their frustrated conversations, had emptied their coffee cups and takeout containers. She knew they were good people, trying to do good work. She knew they were trying to help people like her, people in poor countries who did not have clean water. As she worked her way around the lab, she found herself near the testing station where Marcus had been standing. The water purification device was still running, though barely. The flow of clean water had slowed to a trickle, just a few drops per second. Maria paused, looking at the device with curiosity. She had watched these machines for months now, always with the same result. The water would flow well at first, then slower and slower until it barely worked at all. She had heard the engineers talking about it late at night when she cleaned their offices. They said something was blocking the filter. The dirt particles stuck together and clogged everything up. She looked at the device more closely. Water went in at the top through a funnel-like opening, contaminated and brown. It should come out at the bottom through a small spout, clean and clear. But the flow was so slow now, just drops. She could see through the clear plastic chamber that the white filter inside had turned dark brown. It looked choked, suffocated. Maria set down her mop and walked closer, examining the machine more carefully. She knew she should not be so curious about it, but she could not help herself. She had always been interested in how things worked. She thought about her childhood in Guatemala, in the village of Santa Rosa de Lima. It was a small village in the highlands, surrounded by coffee plantations and pine forests. Beautiful, but poor. Water was always a problem there. The stream that supplied the village often ran muddy, especially in the rainy season. People got sick from the water. Children got diarrhea and fever. Some died. Maria remembered her best friend, Rosita. They had been 7 years old, playing together every day, dreaming about growing up and becoming teachers. Then Rosita got sick from the water. She had terrible diarrhea and a high fever. There was no doctor in the village, no medicine, and certainly no money to take her to the hospital in the city. Rosita died 3 days later. Maria had held her hand at the end, watching her friend slip away, feeling helpless and angry. That was 26 years ago, but Maria still thought about Rosita often. She thought about all the children who still die from dirty water, all the families who suffered because they did not have something as simple and basic as clean water to drink. The village had tried to build a filtration system once, using sand and gravel like they had seen in a pamphlet from a missionary group. The men of the village had worked together to build a large concrete tank filled with layers of sand and gravel. Water from the stream would go in the top, filter through the sand and gravel, and come out the bottom cleaner. It worked for a few weeks, then it stopped working. The sand and gravel became clogged with mud and organic matter. The water barely flowed through. They tried to clean it, scooping out the sand and washing it, but it clogged again quickly. Maria's father had tried to fix it. He was not an engineer, just a farmer who knew how to fix things through trial and error. He had noticed that if they let the water sit and swirl in a barrel first, before it went into the filter, some of the dirt would settle to the bottom or stay floating in the moving water. The water that flowed out the side of the barrel was cleaner, with less sediment. Not perfect, but better. It helped the filter last longer before it clogged. Maria looked at the Harrison Technologies device again. The water went straight down through the filter. All the dirty particles hit the filter at once, piling up on top of each other, blocking the tiny holes. What if the water moved differently? What if it did not hit the filter straight on? What if it swirled around first, like in her father's barrel? She thought about washing clothes in the river back home. The women of the village would gather at a wide, shallow part of the stream, kneeling on the flat rocks, scrubbing their laundry. Maria had learned that if you scrubbed in one spot, pushing down hard, the dirt just ground deeper into the fabric. But if you swirled the clothes in the water, moving them in circles, agitating them, the dirt loosened and floated away. Movement, circulation, that was the key. Maria stared at the water purification device, her idea growing stronger. The water should not go straight down. It should move around, swirl, keep the particles moving so they did not pile up in one place and block everything. She looked around the lab. It was late morning now, almost 11, and no one else was there. Most of the engineers did not arrive until after lunch, working late into the night instead. She was alone with the humming equipment and flickering monitors. Maria knew she should not touch anything. Mr. Harrison had been very clear. These machines were expensive and important. But the idea would not leave her mind. It burned in her thoughts, insistent. She thought about the children in villages like Santa Rosa de Lima, children who got sick from dirty water. If this machine could be fixed, if her idea could work, it might save lives. Was it not worth trying? What was the worst that could happen? She might get fired, but children might die if nobody fixed these machines. Maria made her decision. She bit her lip, looked around once more to make sure she was alone, then carefully picked up the water purification device. She turned it off, disconnected the tubes, and examined it closely. Her hands were shaking slightly. She unscrewed the top cap and looked inside. The filter was there, a white membrane that was supposed to catch all the bad particles. She could see brown stains where particles had accumulated, layer upon layer. The filter looked like it was choking, drowning in dirt. She touched it gently with her finger. It felt slimy and clogged. Maria thought about her idea. If the water came in from the side instead of the top, it would hit the wall of the chamber first, then swirl around before going through the filter. The particles might not stick so fast because they would be moving, circulating, instead of falling straight down onto the filter and piling up. She looked around the lab, her heart pounding. She was really going to do this. She was really going to modify this expensive machine. In a drawer near the testing station, she found various tubes and fittings that the engineers used for their experiments. There were flexible tubes in different sizes, connectors, clamps, and other parts. She found a small, flexible tube, about the thickness of her pinky finger, the kind used to connect different parts of equipment. Working carefully, she disconnected the main inlet tube that fed water from the top of the device. She found a side port on the chamber, one that looked like it was meant for pressure measurement or some other purpose. She connected her flexible tube to this side port, angling it so water would enter from the side at a sharp angle, almost tangential to the circular wall of the chamber. Then she noticed something else in the drawer, a small plastic propeller, the kind used in toy boats or maybe for some kind of mixing experiment. It was only about an inch in diameter, with 4 small blades. One of the engineers must have been using it for something. Maria held it up to the light, thinking, if this was inside the chamber, it would help the water spin. The spinning water would keep particles moving in circles instead of settling on the filter. Her hands trembled as she carefully opened the chamber by removing several screws. Inside, she could see the filter membrane mounted at the bottom, with space above it for water to flow through. She took the small propeller and a piece of thin wire she found in another drawer. She fashioned a simple mount, suspending the propeller in the upper part of the chamber so it would spin freely when water flowed past it. The wire mount was crude, twisted and bent by hand, but it held the propeller in place. Maria put everything back together, double-checking each connection with the care of someone who knew that a small mistake could ruin everything. She tightened screws, made sure tubes were firmly attached, checked that nothing was leaking. Her hands were sweating, and she wiped them on her uniform several times. She said a small prayer, something her mother had taught her. "Holy Mary, Mother of God, please forgive me if I am making a mistake. Please help me if this can help others. Please protect me and my family. Amen." Then she reconnected the device to the testing station. The contaminated water tank was still half full of murky brown water. She turned on the pump that fed water into the device. For a moment, nothing happened, and Maria's heart sank. Had she broken it? Then water began to flow. Brown, contaminated water went in through the side inlet. Maria could see through the clear plastic chamber walls that the water was indeed swirling, moving in a circular pattern around the inside of the chamber. The little propeller started to spin, slowly at first, then faster, creating a visible vortex. The water churned and circulated, and she could see particles suspended in the moving water, spinning around and around instead of settling. And at the bottom, from the output spout, clear water began to stream out. Maria watched, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Usually, she had observed over many months of cleaning this lab, the flow would start strong and then slow down within minutes as the filter clogged. But this time, 5 minutes passed and the water kept flowing steadily. She checked the output. Clear, clean water flowing fast. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. The flow stayed strong and steady, maybe even faster than when the devices normally started. Maria felt tears pricking her eyes. Was it really working? She stood there for 30 minutes, watching the water flow, watching the little propeller spin, watching the particles swirl around in the chamber instead of clogging the filter. She checked the output water, holding a cup under the spout. It was crystal clear, clearer than the water that came from her kitchen tap at home. 45 minutes, an hour. The flow continued, strong and steady. The tank of contaminated water was slowly emptying, and the clean water collection tank was filling. Maria could hardly believe it. Her simple idea, her crude modification, seemed to be working. She wanted to tell someone, to shout for joy, to celebrate. But she was also afraid. She had touched something she was not supposed to touch. Even if it worked, even if it was helping, she had disobeyed Mr. Harrison's direct order. She might get fired for this. She thought about her family back home, about her mother who needed medicine for her diabetes, about her brother Luis, who was in his last year of high school and dreaming of going to university, about her twin sisters Rosa and Carmen, who were just 15 and still in school. They all depended on the money Maria sent home every month. If she lost her job, what would happen to them? But another part of her, a part she had buried deep for many years, felt something different. Pride. She had seen a problem and figured out a solution. She had used her mind and her hands to create something that might help people. For the first time in 15 years of cleaning other people's offices and toilets, she felt like she mattered, like she was more than just invisible hands that scrubbed and mopped and emptied trash. Maria decided to leave a note. She had to tell someone what she had done, had to explain her modifications so the engineers would understand it. She found a piece of paper and a pen on one of the desks, and she wrote carefully in her simple English, trying to use the best words she knew. Dear engineers, I am sorry I touched the machine. I know I should not, but I have an idea and I want to try to help. In my village in Guatemala, we have problem with dirty water. Filter gets clogged very fast. My father, he make the water go in circle in a barrel before it goes to filter. This helps. So I think maybe if water goes in circle in your machine too, the dirt will not pile up so fast on the filter. The dirt will keep moving around in the water instead of blocking everything. I change where water comes in, from the side, so it spins. I put small propeller inside to help the water keep spinning. Please do not be angry. I just want to help people who need clean water, like people in my village. Please do not fire me. I am sorry if I break something. Maria Santos, cleaning lady, night shift. She read it over several times, correcting a few spelling mistakes. Then she folded the note and left it on the testing station right next to the modified device, which was still running with steady, strong flow. She weighed it down with a pen so it would not blow away. Maria stood there for a long moment, looking at what she had done. The machine hummed quietly, the little propeller spun, the water swirled and flowed. Then she quickly finished her cleaning duties in the lab, anxious to leave before anyone arrived and caught her. She pushed her cart out of the lab, closed the door behind her, and continued with her rounds on the other floors. But she could not stop thinking about the machine. For the rest of her shift, as she mopped floors and wiped down desks and emptied trash bins, her mind kept going back to that lab, to that device, to the water flowing clear and steady. Had she really fixed it? Would it keep working? Or would it clog up eventually like all the others? When her shift ended at 6 in the morning, Maria clocked out and took the bus home to her small apartment in a rundown neighborhood south of downtown. She lived in a one-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor of an aging building. The elevator usually did not work, so she climbed the stairs, her legs aching from standing and walking all night. Her apartment was sparse but clean. A small kitchen, a living room with a second-hand couch and a television, a bedroom with a single bed. On one wall, she had photos of her family back home. Her mother, Maria Elena, her brother, Luis, handsome and serious in his school uniform. Her sisters, Rosa and Carmen, laughing together in a photo taken at a birthday party. Maria changed out of her uniform and into comfortable clothes, but she could not sleep. She was too anxious, too worried about what she had done. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining different scenarios. Maybe the machine would work, and the engineers would be happy. Maybe they would thank her. Or maybe they would be angry that she touched something without permission. Maybe Mr. Harrison would fire her. Maybe she would never find another job. Maybe her family would suffer because of her foolish decision to meddle with things she did not understand. She dozed fitfully for a few hours, her sleep full of anxious dreams. In one dream, she was back in Santa Rosa de Lima, and Rosita was there, alive and well, drinking clean water from Maria's machine. In another dream, Mr. Harrison was shouting at her, his face red with anger, security guards dragging her out of the building while engineers laughed at her presumption. She woke up in the early afternoon, unrested and nervous. She made herself some lunch, but she could barely eat. She tried to watch television, but she could not focus. Finally, she gave up and decided to go to the church she sometimes attended. She needed to pray, to find some peace. At the small Catholic church in her neighborhood, Maria lit a candle and knelt in a pew. She prayed for guidance, for forgiveness if she had done wrong, for protection for her family. She prayed that if her idea was good, it would help people. And she prayed for courage to face whatever consequences came from her actions. That evening, as she prepared for her night shift, Maria felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. What would she find when she returned to the lab? Would the machine still be running? Would there be angry notes waiting for her? Would her supervisor be there to tell her she was fired? She arrived at Harrison Technologies at her usual time, 9:30 in the evening, 30 minutes before her shift started at 10. She clocked in, got her cleaning cart from the supply room, and started her rounds. She deliberately saved the R&D floor for last, too nervous to go there first. But finally, around midnight, she had to go. She pushed her cart toward the research and development lab, her heart hammering in her chest. As she approached, she saw that the lights were on. Someone was there. Her mouth went dry. She pushed the door open slowly and peered inside. Dr. Robert Chen was there, along with 2 other engineers she recognized. They were all gathered around the testing station, examining the device she had modified. They were talking excitedly, pointing at the machine, taking notes, running tests. Maria froze in the doorway, unsure what to do. Should she leave? Should she announce herself? Before she could decide, Dr. Chen looked up and saw her. "You must be Maria," he said, his face breaking into a wide smile. "Maria Santos, the night shift cleaning lady." He walked toward her, and Maria instinctively took a step back, afraid. "Please, do not be scared. We are not angry. We need to talk to you about what you did to this device." "I am sorry," Maria said quickly. "I know I should not touch it. I just wanted to help." "Help?" Dr. Chen laughed, a sound of pure joy and amazement. "Maria, you did more than help. You solved a problem that has been driving us crazy for 6 months. Do you know what you have done? This modification, this simple, elegant modification, actually works. We have been running tests for hours. The flow rate is stable, the water quality is perfect, the filter is not clogging. You fixed it." Maria stared at him, unable to fully process what he was saying. "It still works? After many hours?" "We have been testing it all evening," James Wu said, joining them. "We found your note this morning, read what you did, and we have been analyzing it all day. We built a duplicate using proper parts, and we have been running side-by-side comparisons. Your version and our precision-engineered version both work equally well. The principle you discovered is sound. By creating a vortex flow, you keep the particles in suspension. They do not settle on the filter membrane, at least not in the same way. This could be the breakthrough we have been looking for." Maria felt dizzy. This was not what she had expected. "Where is Mr. Harrison?" she asked. "Is he angry?" "He does not know yet," Dr. Chen said. "We wanted to confirm that it works before we tell him. And we wanted to find you first, to talk to you, to understand how you thought of this. Maria, can you tell us, how did you come up with this idea?" And so, standing there in the lab at midnight, still holding the handle of her cleaning cart, Maria told them her story. She told them about her village, about the failed filtration system, about her father's barrel where water swirled before filtering. She told them about washing clothes in the river, about how circular motion loosened dirt better than direct pressure. She told them about watching the machines clog over and over, and thinking that maybe the problem was not the filter itself, but the way water hit the filter. The engineers listened, fascinated. When she finished, Dr. Chen was shaking his head in wonder. "We made it too complicated," he said. "We were trying to solve this with advanced materials and surface chemistry. We never thought about fluid dynamics, about changing the flow pattern. We could not see the forest for the trees, but you saw it clearly because you were not trapped by our assumptions." "What happens now?" Maria asked nervously. "Will Mr. Harrison fire me?" "Fire you?" Dr. Chen laughed again. "Maria, I think you are about to have a very different conversation with Mr. Harrison than you are expecting. But first, I need to ask you something. Tomorrow morning, we are going to show this to Mr. Harrison and explain what happened. Will you come with us? Will you be there to explain your idea to him directly?" Maria felt her stomach clench with fear. "I do not want to. He is very angry with me already. He says I do not clean good enough." "He needs to hear this from you," Dr. Chen said gently. "He needs to understand what you did and how you thought of it. Please, Maria, this is important, not just for the project, but for you. You deserve recognition for what you have accomplished. Okay, Maria said softly, though every instinct told her to refuse. I will come. What time? 9 in the morning. I will come to find you. Where will you be? I finish my shift at 6. I usually go home after, but I can come back. No need, Dr. Chen said. Can you stay after your shift ends? We can find you a place to rest for a few hours. We have a lounge area with couches. Then, at 9, we will go together to see Mr. Harrison. Okay, Maria agreed. I will stay. She finished her cleaning that night in a daze, her mind spinning with what had happened. The engineers were not angry. They said she fixed it. They said her idea worked. They wanted her to meet with Mr. Harrison. It all seemed impossible, like a dream. When her shift ended at 6 in the morning, Dr. Chen showed her to a small lounge area with comfortable couches, a kitchenette, and a television. This is where we come to rest during long work sessions, he explained. Please make yourself comfortable. There are blankets in that closet if you want to nap. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Maria thanked him, and after he left, she tried to rest on one of the couches. But sleep would not come. She was too nervous about the meeting with Mr. Harrison. At 8:30, she went to the bathroom, washed her face, and tried to make herself presentable. She changed out of her cleaning uniform into the black skirt and white blouse she had brought in her bag. She brushed her hair and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked tired and scared, she thought, but she squared her shoulders and tried to look brave. At 9 o'clock exactly, Dr. Chen came to get her. Are you ready? He asked. No, Maria said honestly, but I will come. They rode the elevator up to the 45th floor together, the executive floor, where Maria had only been to clean late at night, never during business hours. They walked down a corridor with thick carpet and expensive artwork on the walls. Jennifer, Mr. Harrison's assistant, greeted them at her desk outside his office. The engineering team is already inside, she said. Dr. Chen, Mr. Harrison is waiting for you. And you must be Maria. Welcome. She said it kindly, and Maria relaxed a tiny bit. They went into Mr. Harrison's office. It was a huge space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A massive desk dominated one side of the room. The other side had a conference table where all 12 engineers were already seated. Marcus Harrison stood at the window, his back to them, hands clasped behind his back. Mr. Harrison, Dr. Chen said, Maria Santos is here. Marcus turned around, and Maria saw his expression change from expectation to surprise to something unreadable when he saw her. His eyes were cold, assessing. She felt herself shrinking under his gaze. This is the cleaning lady, Marcus said flatly, his voice showing no emotion. The one who cannot even remove a carpet stain properly. Sir, Dr. Chen said firmly, his voice carrying a note of warning. Maria is also the person who solved our filtration problem. Marcus looked at Dr. Chen, then back at Maria, then at the modified device sitting on his conference table. Explain, he said curtly. Dr. Chen gestured for Maria to sit, but she shook her head, too nervous to sit in such an intimidating environment. He began to explain. 2 nights ago, Maria was cleaning the R&D lab when she observed one of our prototypes failing, as they all have. But instead of just cleaning around it, she looked at the problem and had an idea based on her experiences growing up in Guatemala. She modified the device, changing the inlet configuration to create a circular flow pattern instead of direct downward flow. Marcus interrupted. She touched my $50,000 prototype without permission? Yes, sir, Dr. Chen said. And because she did, we now have a solution. The modification has eliminated the clogging problem. We have been running continuous tests for 36 hours. The device maintains optimal flow and perfect water quality, 0 degradation in performance. Marcus walked closer to the conference table and picked up the modified device. He examined it closely, turning it in his hands. He could see the side inlet, the propeller inside, the crude wire mounting. Then he picked up a second device that looked almost identical, but with precision-machined parts. "We built this one yesterday," James Wu explained. "Same principle as Maria's modification, but using proper engineering components. It works exactly the same. The fluid dynamics are sound. The vortex flow keeps particles in suspension, preventing the rapid fouling that plagued our previous designs. It is brilliant in its simplicity." Marcus set down the devices and looked at Maria with an expression she could not read. "Tell me exactly what you did," he said to her, "in your own words." Maria swallowed hard, her throat dry. She began to speak, her voice shaking at first, then growing stronger as she told her story. She talked about her village, about the water problems, about her father's solution with the barrel. She talked about washing clothes in the river, about how movement kept dirt from setting. She talked about watching the machines clog and thinking the water needed to move differently, to swirl instead of falling straight down. "My father, he always say that nature knows best," Maria said. "Water in nature, it does not go straight. It curves, it swirls, it moves in circles. A river bends and turns. When water goes around rocks, it makes little whirlpools. Maybe this is a better way to clean water than forcing it straight through a filter." The engineers nodded, impressed. "That is excellent intuitive reasoning," Dr. Chen said. "You applied biomimicry principles without even knowing the formal term." Marcus had listened to Maria's entire explanation in silence. Now he sat down heavily in his desk chair, the leather creaking. He stared at Maria for a long moment, and she felt her face flush under his intense gaze. The room was completely silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. My team of 12 engineers, who collectively hold 15 doctoral degrees from institutions like MIT, Stanford, and Caltech, who I pay a combined salary of over $2 million per year, could not solve this problem in 6 months of intensive work? But you, a cleaning lady with an 8th grade education from Guatemala, solved it in one night with spare parts and intuition?" When he put it like that, it sounded absurd. Maria felt her brief confidence drain away. "I am sorry, Mr. Harrison. I should not have touched your machine." "Do not apologize," Marcus said sharply, and Maria flinched. He saw her reaction, and his expression softened slightly. "I am not angry with you, Maria. I am angry with myself." "Sir?" Dr. Chen said, confused. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. "When I was young, I was a lot like you, Maria," he spoke without turning around. "My father was a janitor at a hotel. My mother cleaned houses. We lived in a tiny apartment in a bad neighborhood. I worked my way through college doing construction, washing dishes, whatever paid. I learned to solve problems with whatever I had on hand, because we could not afford the right tools or materials. I built my first computer from parts I salvaged from a dumpster behind an electronics store." He turned around to face them. "But somewhere along the way, after I became successful, I forgot all that. I forgot where I came from. I started to believe that success meant I was smarter than everyone else, that education and wealth made me superior. I looked down on people doing the work I used to do, people like you, Maria. And in doing so, I became blind and arrogant." He walked back to the conference table and picked up Maria's original modification again, examining it with new respect. "This is brilliant because it is simple. It solves a complex problem with basic physics and common sense. But my team could not see it because they were too educated, too trained to think in complicated ways. They looked for sophisticated solutions, Because they assumed sophisticated problems required sophisticated answers. He looked at Dr. Chen and the other engineers. And I made it worse by putting impossible pressure on you, by demanding results instead of fostering creativity. I created an environment where you were afraid to fail, so you kept trying variations of the same approaches instead of thinking radically differently. He turned back to Maria. You were not constrained by our assumptions or our fears. You just saw a problem and tried to fix it using principles you learned from life. That is real intelligence. That is real innovation. Maria did not know what to say. She had never expected this, had never imagined Mr. Harrison would say such things. Maria, Marcus continued, what is your position here? What is your job title? I am night shift custodial worker, Maria said quietly. And what do we pay you? $10.50 per hour. I work 40 hours per week, so about $420 before taxes. Marcus winced. That is a little over $20,000 per year. He looked at his engineers. That is less than 1% of what I pay any of you. He looked back at Maria. And yet, you have contributed more value to this company in one night than all of us combined have contributed in 6 months. He walked back to his desk and pressed the intercom button. Jennifer, get me human resources on the phone immediately, and have our legal team stand by. I need patent paperwork drawn up. Maria's eyes widened. Patent? She whispered to Dr. Chen. What is patent? It means this is your invention, he whispered back. You will own the rights to it, or at least share the rights. That is worth money, potentially a lot of money. Marcus spent 5 minutes on the phone with human resources, giving instructions in a voice that left no room for argument. When he hung up, he turned back to Maria. Effective immediately, you are no longer a custodial worker. How would you like to work in our solutions engineering department? We have a team that goes to client sites around the world, helping them implement and optimize our technologies. The work involves problem solving, training users, and figuring out practical solutions to real-world challenges. No formal engineering degree is required, just intelligence, creativity, practical thinking, and the ability to communicate with people from different backgrounds. Based on what you have shown me, you have all of those qualities. Maria stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. You want me to be an engineer? Not an engineer in the traditional sense, Marcus said, but a problem solver, which is more important. Your starting salary will be $65,000 per year, with full benefits, including health insurance, retirement matching, and 3 weeks of paid vacation. That is standard for the position. You will also receive training, both here and through online courses, to help you develop the skills you need. Maria felt dizzy. $65,000? That was more than 3 times what she made now. That would change everything for her family. But surely there was a mistake. She was just a cleaning lady. She did not even finish high school. I do not have the education, she said. I will not be good enough. You have something better than formal education, Marcus said firmly. You have practical wisdom and the ability to see things clearly, without preconceptions. You can learn the technical details. What you have naturally, the way you think and solve problems, that cannot be taught. Dr. Chen spoke up. I will personally oversee your training, Maria. We will work together. I promise you, you can do this job. You have already proven you can. Tears began streaming down Maria's face. She tried to wipe them away, embarrassed to be crying in front of all these important people. I do not know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Sarah Mitchell said gently from her seat at the conference table. Yes, Maria said. Yes, thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you so much. Marcus smiled. and it was perhaps the first genuine smile his employees had seen from him in months. "Good. Jennifer will help you with all the paperwork and get you set up with an office and computer. But there is one more thing." He pulled out a folder from his desk and opened it. "This is the project file for our water purification system, with all the technical documentation. I want you to read through it, understand what we are trying to accomplish. Take your time, ask questions when you need to. Your first assignment will be to work with Dr. Chen's team to refine your modification for mass production. We need to turn your prototype into something we can manufacture at scale." Then he pulled out another document. "This is patent paperwork. The modification you invented is patent-worthy, meaning it is a unique and valuable innovation. The lawyers will explain all the details, but essentially, you will be listed as the primary inventor on the patent for this vortex filtration system. Harrison Technologies will own the patent, but as the inventor, you will receive a percentage of any licensing fees or royalties that come from it. That could be substantial, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars over time, depending on how widely the technology is adopted." Maria could barely breathe. She looked around the room at the engineers, all of whom were smiling at her. She looked at Mr. Harrison, who was looking at her with something like respect. None of this seemed real. "There is one more thing I need to say," Marcus said, his voice becoming more serious. "Maria, I need to apologize to you. When I saw you cleaning that carpet stain in the hallway, I was rude and dismissive. I criticized you for not doing your job well, when in fact, you were doing exactly what you should have been doing. You were trying different methods, experimenting, problem-solving. The same qualities that led you to fix our filtration system. I was too blind and arrogant to see it. I am truly sorry." "It is okay, Mr. Harrison," Maria said softly. "No, it is not okay," Marcus insisted. "It is not okay at all. You deserved respect then, just as you deserve respect now. Your job title should not determine how I treat you, but I promise you, I will do better, and I will make sure this company does better. We are going to create programs to identify and develop talent at all levels of the organization, regardless of formal credentials. Because there might be dozens of people like you here, people with brilliant ideas who have never been given a chance to share them." The meeting continued for another hour as the engineers explained the testing they had done and the plans for moving forward. Maria listened, trying to understand the technical discussions, asking questions when she was confused. The engineers were patient with her, explaining things in simple terms, treating her like a colleague rather than like a cleaning lady who had stumbled into something by accident. Finally, Marcus concluded the meeting. "Excellent work, everyone. Dr. Chen, please coordinate with manufacturing to begin prototyping the production version. James, work with marketing to update our launch timeline. Sarah, brief the investors on the breakthrough. And Maria, go with Jennifer to get everything set up. Welcome to the team." As the engineers filed out, talking excitedly among themselves, Marcus asked Maria to stay for a moment. When they were alone, he gestured for her to sit, and this time she did, perching nervously on the edge of a chair. "Maria, I want to tell you something personal," Marcus said, sitting in the chair next to her rather than behind his intimidating desk. "When I was building this company, I had a mentor, an older gentleman named Albert, who had been a machinist for 40 years. He never went to college, but he understood manufacturing better than anyone I have ever met. He taught me that the best ideas often come from the people doing the actual work, the people on the floor who see the problems up close every day. I forgot that lesson. You reminded me of it." He paused, looking out the window. "I have spent the last 10 years focused on profits and prestige and building an empire. I lost sight of why I started this company in the first place. It was supposed to be about solving real problems for real people, about using technology to make the world better. Your modification, your simple, elegant solution, is going to bring clean water to millions of people. That is what success really looks like. Not my net worth or the size of my office, but the lives we change. Maria felt her eyes filling with tears again. In my village, we had a saying, "Water is life." Without clean water, nothing else matters. If these machines can work, if they can bring clean water to people who need it, then I am very happy. They will work, Marcus said with certainty, thanks to you. And Maria, about your family in Guatemala. Jennifer mentioned that you send money home every month. How would you like to bring them here instead? With your new salary and the patent royalties, you could afford to bring your mother and siblings to the United States, help them get established. We could even look into sponsoring their visas if needed. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. She began to cry in earnest now, unable to hold back the emotion. My mother, she is sick. She has diabetes and needs medicine we cannot afford. My brother, he wants to study, to go to university, but there is no money. My sisters, they are smart girls, but in our village, girls often have to stop school to work. If I could bring them here, give them chances I never had, it would be a dream. Then let us make it happen, Marcus said gently. We will help however we can. You have given us so much. Let us give something back. They talked for a while longer, about logistics and plans and the future. When Maria finally left Marcus's office, she felt like she was walking on air. Jennifer set her up with temporary office space, gave her a computer login, and scheduled her first training sessions with Dr. Chen. Maria spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to absorb everything that had happened. That evening, instead of putting on her cleaning uniform, Maria left the building in her regular clothes, through the front entrance instead of the employee entrance she usually used. As she walked to the bus stop, she called her mother in Guatemala. It was evening there, and Maria Elena answered on the third ring. Mama, Maria said, her voice shaking with emotion. I have something to tell you. Something wonderful has happened. Over the next weeks and months, Maria's life transformed completely. She threw herself into her new role, learning everything she could about the water purification technology. Dr. Chen became not just her supervisor, but her mentor and friend, patiently explaining complex concepts and helping her build the knowledge base she needed. The other engineers welcomed her warmly, intrigued by her unique perspective and fresh way of looking at problems. The vortex filtration system, as it came to be called, proved to be even better than the initial tests suggested. When manufactured with precision components, the devices could run for weeks without any maintenance, filtering thousands of gallons of highly contaminated water. The production line was modified to incorporate Maria's design, and within 3 months, the first units were ready for field deployment. Marcus insisted that Maria accompany him and Dr. Chen on the initial deployment trips. They traveled first to Kenya, to a refugee camp outside Nairobi that housed 50,000 people displaced by regional conflicts. The camp had limited access to clean water, and waterborne diseases were common, especially among children. When Maria stepped off the plane in Nairobi, it was the first time she had ever left the United States since arriving there 15 years ago. The smells, the sounds, the heat, all reminded her of Guatemala. But the poverty here was even more severe than what she had known growing up. The refugee camp was a sprawling city of tents and makeshift shelters, dusty paths between them, children playing in the dirt. They set up 50 water purification units at strategic locations throughout the camp, training local workers on how to operate and maintain them. When the first unit was turned on, drawing water from a contaminated river and producing clear, clean drinking water, a crowd gathered to watch. People lined up with containers, eager to fill them. Maria watched as families filled their jugs and bottles, as children drank the clean water and laughed. An elderly woman approached her, took her hands, and spoke in Swahili. A translator, one of the local workers, conveyed her words. She says the clean water will save her grandchildren. She says you are an angel sent by God." Maria shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She spoke through the translator. "Tell her I am not an angel. I am just a woman who was lucky enough to be able to help. Tell her that in my village in Guatemala, we also had no clean water. I know how precious this is. Tell her that her grandchildren deserve to be healthy, to have a future, and I am honored to help." The elderly woman hugged Maria tightly, and Maria hugged her back, both of them crying. In that moment, Maria thought about Rosita, her childhood friend who had died from dirty water. She thought about how many Rositas there were in the world, how many children who deserved to live but died from something as preventable as contaminated water. And she thought about how her simple idea, her willingness to try to fix a problem, might save some of those children. Over the following months, Harrison Technologies deployed water purification units to dozens of locations around the world. Refugee camps in Uganda and Bangladesh, villages in rural India and Nepal, disaster zones in the Philippines and Haiti. Everywhere they went, the response was the same: gratitude, joy, relief. Clean water meant fewer sick children, fewer days lost to illness, more time for school and work and life. The impact was measurable. Within 6 months, the areas where the units were deployed showed dramatic decreases in waterborne diseases. Child mortality rates dropped. School attendance increased because children were not sick as often. Women and girls, who typically had the responsibility of collecting water, spent less time walking to distant sources and more time on education and economic activities. The media began to notice. Articles appeared in international development journals, in newspapers, in online tech publications. The story of how a cleaning lady had solved a problem that stumped a team of engineers became a viral sensation. Marcus gave interviews, always making sure to emphasize Maria's contribution. Maria herself was interviewed several times, though she found the attention uncomfortable at first. "I am just a regular person," she said in one interview. "I saw a problem and I tried to help. Anyone could have done the same." "But that is precisely the point," the interviewer said. "You prove that innovation can come from anywhere, from anyone. You remind us that we should never underestimate someone based on their job title or formal education." 2 years after Maria's breakthrough, Harrison Technologies won a major humanitarian award for the impact of their water purification systems. More than 5 million people in 30 countries now had access to clean water thanks to the Vortex filtration design. At the award ceremony in New York, Marcus stood at the podium to accept the honor. But before his speech, he did something unexpected. He called Maria to join him on stage. "This award belongs to this woman more than it belongs to me," Marcus told the audience of business leaders, philanthropists, and journalists. Maria Santos came to America with an 8th-grade education and a dream of helping her family. She worked night shifts as a cleaning lady, a job that many of us would not even notice, let alone respect. But when she saw a problem, she did not see herself as unqualified to solve it. She saw a challenge and applied her intelligence, creativity, and courage to finding a solution. She fixed in one night what 12 engineers could not fix in 6 months. She reminded me and my entire company that wisdom and worth are not measured by degrees or titles, but by character and the willingness to contribute. And she did all of this while showing more humility and grace than I have ever demonstrated in my entire career. The audience erupted in applause. Maria stood beside Marcus, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the recognition and the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about how far she had come from that night in the lab when she had nervously modified that machine, terrified of being fired. She thought about her family, who were now living with her in Seattle, Her mother, healthy and receiving proper medical care, her siblings in American schools, all of them building new lives. And she thought about all the people around the world who now had clean water because she had been willing to try. The next morning, back in Seattle, Marcus called Maria into his office for a private meeting. She had long since stopped being nervous around him. Over the past 2 years, they had worked together closely, had traveled together to deployment sites, had developed a relationship based on mutual respect. Marcus had changed in those 2 years. He was still driven and demanding, but he had regained his humanity, his connection to the purpose behind his work. Maria, you have been with the company in your new role for almost 2 years now, Marcus said. You have done exceptional work. The field teams love working with you because you understand not just the technology, but the people who use it. You have saved us millions in implementation costs by finding simple solutions to complex deployment challenges. And you have become one of the most valued members of our entire organization. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I love my work. Every day I feel grateful. Marcus smiled. I am glad. But I need to talk to you about the patent for the vortex filtration modification. Do you remember when I told you that you would receive a share of the licensing fees? Maria nodded. Yes, you told me this, but I have not thought much about it. I am happy with my salary. It is more money than I ever dreamed of having. Well, the patent has now been licensed to several other companies who want to use the same principle in their filtration systems, Marcus said. Not just for water purification, but for other applications too. Air filtration, medical devices, industrial processes. The licensing fees have been substantial, very substantial. He slid a document across the desk to her. This is your portion of the licensing fees for the first 2 years. Maria looked at the number on the document. She blinked, looked again, certain she was misreading it. The figure had 7 digits, over $2 million. This cannot be right, Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. There must be a mistake. It is exactly right, Marcus said, and it will continue to generate income for years to come as long as the patent is active, which will be for at least another 18 years. Maria, you are now financially secure for life. You never have to worry about money again. You can help your family, buy a house, invest for the future. You have earned every penny of it. Maria stared at the document, unable to speak. $2 million. She had grown up in a village where most families lived on less than $1,000 per year. She had spent 15 years in America cleaning offices for barely enough to survive and send some money home. And now this? My mother, Maria finally said, her voice choked with emotion. She has been sick for so long. Now I can make sure she has the best doctors, the best treatment. My brother Luis, he can go to any university he wants. My sisters, they can have educations, opportunities. And my village, Santa Rosa de Lima, maybe I can help them build a real water system with these purification units. They still do not have clean water there. You can do all of that and more, Marcus said gently. The money is yours to use as you see fit. But Maria, I want you to know something. This money, while it is life-changing for you personally, is just a small reflection of the true value of what you have created. The real value is in the lives saved, the suffering prevented, the futures made possible by clean water. That is priceless. That is your real legacy. Maria began to cry, overwhelmed by emotion. Marcus came around the desk and handed her a box of tissues, sitting in the chair next to her. I never thought my life would become like this, Maria said through her tears. When I came to America, I just wanted to work hard, help my family, maybe one day have a little house. I never dreamed of anything like this." "You know what the most remarkable thing is?" Marcus said. "You have not changed. You are still the same humble, hard-working, kind person you were when you were cleaning my offices. Success has not made you arrogant or entitled. You still think about others first. That is rare, Maria. That is beautiful." "You have changed too," Maria said, looking at him. "When I first saw you, you were very hard, very cold. Now you are different, more human." Marcus nodded slowly. "You changed me. You reminded me of who I used to be and who I wanted to be. You reminded me that success without compassion is empty, that wealth without purpose is meaningless. I am grateful for that lesson, even if it was painful to learn." They sat together for a while, talking about the future, about plans for expanding the water purification program, about Maria's ideas for improving other products. Eventually, Maria stood to leave. "Mr. Harrison," she said at the door, "thank you. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for changing my life." "No, Maria," Marcus said firmly. "Thank you for opening my eyes. Thank you for teaching me humility. Thank you for reminding me what really matters. You saved more than our filtration project. You saved me from becoming someone I would have hated." After Maria left, Marcus sat alone in his office for a long time, thinking about the journey they had all been on. He thought about the man he had been 3 years ago, so arrogant and dismissive, unable to see value in people he considered beneath him. He thought about how close he had come to firing Maria that day in the hallway, and how different everything would be if he had. The water purification project would have been canceled. Millions of people would still lack access to clean water. And he would still be the same bitter, isolated person he had been, successful but empty. He pulled out an old photograph from his desk drawer. It showed him as a young man, standing with his parents outside their small apartment. His father was wearing his janitor's uniform. His mother had cleaning supplies in her hands. They looked tired but proud. He remembered how hard they had worked to give him opportunities, to help him get an education, to support his dreams. They had died years ago, before Harrison Technologies became successful, before he became wealthy. He wished they could see him now, not because of his wealth, but because he had finally remembered the lessons they taught him about humility, hard work, and treating everyone with dignity. He put the photo back and pulled out a new one, taken just a few months ago. It showed him and Maria at a village in Honduras, installing water purification units with a group of local families. They were both smiling, surrounded by children and grateful villagers. Maria was showing a young girl how the device worked, and the girl's face was lit up with wonder and delight. This was the photo Marcus wanted to remember. This was the person he wanted to be. This was success. He turned off his office light and headed home, walking past the faint carpet stain in the hallway that he had insisted the maintenance team leave as a reminder. It was barely visible now, almost completely faded, but he always knew where to look for it. Every time he passed it, he remembered the cleaning lady who could not clean properly, and how wrong he had been about everything. Years later, Marcus would tell this story often, especially to young entrepreneurs and business leaders. He would emphasize the importance of humility, of listening to everyone regardless of their position, of staying connected to purpose rather than just pursuing profit. And he would always end the story the same way. The biggest mistake leaders make is assuming that intelligence, creativity, and value are correlated with credentials and job titles, he would say. Maria taught me that the person emptying your trash might be the one with the solution to your biggest problem, if only you are willing to see them, to listen to them, to respect them. She saved my company. More importantly, she saved my soul. Maria continued to thrive at Harrison Technologies for many years. She became a bridge between the engineering teams and the real-world users of their products, traveling frequently to deployment sites, gathering feedback, suggesting improvements. Her insights led to innovations in several other product lines, always characterized by her preference for simple, elegant solutions over complex ones. She bought a comfortable house in a nice neighborhood, brought her entire extended family to America, and ensured that all her younger relatives had access to good education. She funded a scholarship program for students from Guatemala who wanted to study in the United States, and she worked with a nonprofit to install water purification systems throughout rural Guatemala, including in her home village of Santa Rosa de Lima, where a plaque was installed honoring her contribution. The plaque read, "In memory of Rosita Garcia, who died at age 7 from waterborne disease, and in honor of Maria Santos, whose innovation brings clean water to those who need it most. May no other child die from dirty water." On the 5-year anniversary of Maria's breakthrough, Harrison Technologies installed a different plaque in the lobby of their headquarters. It read, "The best solutions come from the most unexpected places. Stay humble. Stay curious. Listen to everyone." Below the words was a simple image of a water purification device with a vortex swirl pattern. And below that, a single line, "Designed by Maria Santos." Marcus stood with Maria at the unveiling ceremony, surrounded by employees, board members, investors, and guests. As he looked around at the diverse group of people who had built the company into what it was today, he felt profound gratitude. Gratitude for the lesson Maria had taught him, for the change she had sparked, not just in the technology, but in the culture of the entire organization. Harrison Technologies had implemented numerous programs inspired by Maria's story. There were innovation funds where any employee, regardless of position, could submit ideas and receive resources to develop them. There were educational programs to help employees without formal degrees gain skills and advance in their careers. There were mentorship programs pairing engineers with workers from other departments to encourage cross-pollination of ideas. And there was a core value prominently displayed throughout the company. Every person has value. Every voice deserves to be heard. These changes had made Harrison Technologies not just more innovative, but more successful. Employee satisfaction increased, retention improved. The company attracted talented people who wanted to work in an environment that valued them as whole human beings, not just as job functions. And the products they created were better, more thoughtful, more responsive to real human needs. In his speech at the plaque unveiling, Marcus said, "5 years ago, a cleaning lady named Maria Santos did something that changed this company forever. She saw a problem and dared to try to solve it, even though everything in her life had taught her to be invisible, to stay in her place, to not presume that she could contribute. But she tried anyway, driven by compassion for people she had never met, people suffering from the same lack of clean water that had marked her childhood. Her courage and creativity solved a technical problem, yes, but more than that, she solved a human problem. She reminded us that we are all connected, that we all have something to offer, and that the measure of a person is not their credentials, but their character. Thank you, Maria, for that gift." Maria stepped forward to speak, something she had become more comfortable with over the years, though she still preferred listening to talking. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you to everyone here. 5 years ago, I was afraid to try, afraid to fail, afraid to lose my job. But I tried anyway, because I thought about the children who die from dirty water, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could help. I am so grateful that my idea worked. But I want to say something important. It was not just my idea. It was the idea of my father, who I watched solve problems with creativity and determination, even though he had no education. It was the wisdom of my village, where people learned to work with nature instead of against it. It was the memory of my friend Rosita, who deserved to live. All of these things came together in that moment in the lab. I was just the person who happened to be there, who had the chance to try. So this plaque should not just honor me. It should honor all the people whose voices are not usually heard, whose ideas are not usually valued, whose contributions are invisible. Let us see them. Let us listen to them, because they might have the answer we are looking for. The audience applauded, many people wiping tears from their eyes. Maria had a way of cutting through complexity and touching the human heart, of reminding people what truly mattered. After the ceremony, as people mingled and congratulated Maria, a young woman approached her. She was wearing a cleaning uniform, and she looked nervous. "Miss Santos," the woman said quietly, "my name is Amara. I work in the cleaning department, night shift, like you used to. I just want to say, you inspire me. You show me that I can be more than what people see. Thank you." Maria took Amara's hands and smiled warmly. You are already more than what people see. Never forget that. And if you have ideas, share them. Do not be afraid. The worst thing that can happen is someone says no. But maybe they say yes, and maybe your idea changes everything. As Maria watched Amara walk away, she thought about how strange and wonderful life was. 5 years ago, she had been in Amara's position, invisible and afraid. Now she was someone who inspired others, who proved that change was possible. It was humbling and empowering at the same time. That evening, Maria sat in her home office, looking at photographs from deployment sites around the world. Children drinking clean water in Kenya. Women filling containers in Bangladesh. Families gathering around purification units in rural India. Each photograph represented lives saved, suffering prevented, futures made possible. This was the real measure of success, she thought. Not the money, not the recognition, not the awards, but the lives touched, the problems solved, the hope created. She thought about Rosita, her friend who had died so long ago. She hoped that somehow, wherever Rosita was, she knew that her death had not been forgotten, that it had inspired Maria to make sure other children did not suffer the same fate. She hoped Rosita was proud. Maria picked up her phone and called her mother. They spoke in Spanish, the language of home and comfort. "Mama, how are you feeling today?" "Very well, mija. The doctor says my diabetes is under control. The medicine is working. I feel strong." "I am so glad, Mama. And Luis, how is he doing at the university?" "He loves it. He is studying civil engineering. He wants to design infrastructure for poor communities, bridges and water systems. He says you inspired him." "And the girls?" "Rosa and Carmen are doing excellent in their studies. Carmen says she wants to be a teacher. Rosa wants to be a doctor. They are such smart girls, mija. You have given them such opportunities." "You gave me opportunities too, Mama," Maria said softly. "You sacrificed so much, working so hard so I could go to school, even if it was only until 8th grade. You taught me to work hard, to never give up, to always think about others. Everything I have accomplished came from what you taught me." "I am so proud of you," Maria Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be so proud too. You honor his memory with your work." They talked for a while longer, about family news, about plans for the holidays, about ordinary things that felt precious. When Maria hung up, she felt at peace. She had been given a chance, a miracle really, and she had made the most of it, not just for herself, but for others. And in doing so, she had found meaning and purpose that no amount of money could buy. In his home across the city, Marcus Harrison sat in his study, reviewing the quarterly financial reports. Harrison Technologies was thriving. The water purification division alone generated over $300 million in annual revenue now, with strong growth projections. But as Marcus looked at the numbers, he found himself caring less about them than he once had. They were important, of course. Revenue meant jobs, meant they could continue their work, meant they had resources to invest in new technologies. But the numbers themselves were not the point anymore. The point was the impact. 5 million people with clean water, thousands of lives saved, countless cases of disease prevented, communities strengthened. That was what mattered. Marcus thought about the journey he had been on over the past 5 years. He had started as a man driven by ego and greed, measuring his worth by his wealth and his superiority over others. Maria's intervention had forced him to confront who he had become and to change course. It had not been easy. Changing deeply ingrained attitudes and behaviors never was. But with Maria's example to guide him and his own determination to be better, he had made real progress. He was not perfect. He still got impatient sometimes, still pushed too hard, still occasionally slipped into old patterns of arrogance. But he was aware of it now. He caught himself, apologized when he made mistakes, tried to do better. And slowly, year by year, he was becoming the kind of leader he had always wanted to be, the kind his father would have been proud of. His father. Marcus missed him more than ever, especially now that he finally understood what his father had been trying to teach him, that every job has dignity, that every person deserves respect, that character matters more than credentials. His father had lived those values every day of his life, cleaning hotel rooms with quiet pride, treating everyone with kindness, never complaining about his circumstances. Marcus had been embarrassed by his father's work when he was young, desperate to prove he was better, destined for more. Now he understood that his father had been great all along, just not in the ways society typically recognized. Marcus picked up his phone and sent a text to Maria. "Thank you for everything you have taught me. I am grateful for you every day." A few moments later, his phone buzzed with her reply. "Thank you for giving me a chance and for having the humility to learn. We are all still growing." Marcus smiled. Yes, he thought, we are all still growing. And that was perhaps the most important lesson of all. Growth never stopped. There was always more to learn, more ways to improve, more understanding to gain. The moment you thought you knew everything, you stopped growing. Maria had saved him from that fate, had cracked open his closed mind and let in the light. He stood and walked to the window of his study, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, millions of people were living their lives, facing their challenges, pursuing their dreams. Some of them were like Maria, brilliant and creative but unseen, their potential untapped because no one had given them a chance. How many solutions were locked away in minds that society had dismissed? How many innovations never happened because someone decided that a cleaning lady or a janitor or a factory worker could not possibly have anything valuable to contribute? Marcus made a silent vow, not for the first time, but with renewed conviction. He would do his part to change that. He would continue to build a company and a culture that saw people for who they really were, not just for their job titles. He would keep telling Maria's story, keep pushing for inclusive innovation, keep fighting against the prejudice and short-sightedness that wasted so much human potential. It was the least he could do after Maria had given him so much. She had not just solved his filtration problem, she had solved his spiritual problem, his crisis of purpose, his loss of humanity. She had shown him the way back to himself, and for that, he would be forever grateful. 10 years after Maria's breakthrough, Harrison Technologies organized a major event, a global summit on water access and innovation, bringing together engineers, policymakers, NGO leaders, and community representatives from around the world. The summit was held in Seattle, and Marcus made sure that Maria was not just invited, but featured as one of the keynote speakers. Maria stood before an audience of 2,000 people, no longer the nervous, frightened cleaning lady who had once been afraid to speak up. She had grown into her role, had gained confidence through years of meaningful work and recognition, but she had not lost her essential humility and warmth. 10 years ago, I was invisible, Maria began. I cleaned offices at night, and most people never even saw me. I had dreams once, when I was young in Guatemala, dreams of using my mind to solve problems and help people. But life was hard. Opportunities were few, and I learned to accept my place as someone whose job was to serve quietly in the background. Then, one night, I saw a machine that was not working, and I had an idea. I was terrified to try it, terrified of being yelled at, fired, punished for presuming that someone like me could have something valuable to contribute. But I tried anyway, and that decision changed my life. She paused, looking out at the audience. But here is what I want you to understand. My story is not special because I am special. It is special because it shows what happens when people are given a chance, when they are seen and heard and valued. How many other Marias are out there, cleaning your offices, driving your trucks, working in your warehouses, full of ideas and creativity, but never given a chance to share them? How much potential are we wasting as a society because we judge people by their credentials instead of their character, by their job titles instead of their capabilities? The audience was silent, hanging on her words. Maria continued. In the past 10 years, I have traveled to dozens of countries, worked with communities facing terrible challenges, and I have seen the same thing everywhere. The people closest to the problems often have the best ideas for solving them, if only someone will listen. The grandmother in Bangladesh who knows her community's water needs better than any foreign expert. The young man in Uganda who has jerry-rigged amazing solutions with limited resources. The farmer in Nepal who understands the local ecosystem in ways no textbook can teach. These people are brilliant. We need to listen to them, learn from them, empower them. She shared stories from her decade of work, bringing the audience to laughter and tears with tales of challenges overcome and lives changed. She spoke with passion about the importance of inclusive innovation, of designing with people rather than for them, of respecting local knowledge and expertise. When she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Maria stood there, overwhelmed as always by the recognition, uncomfortable with being the center of attention, but grateful for the platform to share her message. Later, during the networking session, Maria was surrounded by people wanting to talk to her, to thank her, to share their own stories of innovation from unexpected sources. She listened to each person, asked questions, encouraged them. This was what she loved most: connecting with people, hearing their stories, finding ways to help. A young engineer from India approached her. "Miss Santos, I just want to say thank you. Your story inspired me to start an innovation program at my company where we gather ideas from all employees, not just the engineering team. In the first year, we got over 100 valuable suggestions from assembly line workers, drivers, and administrative staff. Some of them have saved us significant money and improved our products. I never would have thought to ask them if not for your example." Maria smiled warmly. "That is wonderful. You see, everyone has something to contribute. We just have to create space for them to do so." Throughout the day, similar conversations happened all over the summit. Maria's story had become legendary in the world of innovation and international development, a touchstone example of inclusive design and the value of diverse perspectives. Universities taught case studies about the Harrison Technologies water purification breakthrough. Business schools used it to discuss organizational culture and innovation. Nonprofits cited it as evidence for the importance of community engagement. But for Maria, it was never about the fame or the recognition. It was about the water flowing clean, about the children who did not get sick, about the futures made possible. That was what mattered. That was always what had mattered. As the summit concluded and Maria prepared to return to her normal work, Marcus pulled her aside. "Maria, I have been thinking. You have been with Harrison Technologies for 10 years now. You have contributed so much, changed so much. I want to offer you a new role, Vice President of Innovation and Community Engagement. You would lead a team focused on inclusive innovation, gathering insights from unlikely sources, and ensuring our products truly serve the people who need them. It would mean a significant raise and more responsibility, but I cannot think of anyone better suited for it." Maria was quiet for a moment, considering. Then she smiled. "Yes, I would be honored, but only if I can still go to the field regularly. I never want to lose touch with the communities we serve. They keep me grounded, remind me why we do this work." "Of course," Marcus said. "That is exactly why you are perfect for this role." You will never forget what matters. And so Maria's journey continued, her responsibilities growing, her impact expanding, but her essential nature unchanged. She remained humble, curious, compassionate. She remained connected to her roots, to her village, to the memory of Rosita and the motivation it provided. And she remained committed to lifting up others, to seeing the invisible, to proving that everyone has value. Years later, when Maria was interviewed for a documentary about innovation and social impact, the filmmaker asked her to sum up the lessons of her experience. Maria thought for a moment, then said, "I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite the fear. I was terrified that night in the lab, but I tried anyway, because I thought it might help someone. I learned that simple solutions are often the best solutions, that we make things too complicated when we overthink them. I learned that your past does not define your future, that a cleaning lady can become an innovator if given a chance. But most importantly, I learned that we are all connected. When I help someone access clean water in Africa, I honor the memory of my friend in Guatemala. When I empower a young person to share their ideas, I pass on the gift that Mr. Harrison gave me. We all have the power to lift each other up, to see each other, to believe in each other. That is the lesson. That is what I want people to remember." The documentary went on to win awards and was shown in schools and universities around the world. Maria's story inspired countless people to be braver, to contribute their ideas, to never accept being invisible. And Harrison Technologies continued to thrive, not just as a profitable company, but as an example of what business could be when it valued people over profit, purpose over prestige, impact over image. Marcus Harrison, now in his 60s, often reflected on how different his life might have been if he had not been rude to Maria that morning, if she had not been brave enough to try her idea, if he had not been willing to change. He might have been wealthier in pure monetary terms, he thought, but he would have been poverty-stricken in every way that mattered. He would have missed the joy of meaningful work, the satisfaction of positive impact, the richness of genuine human connection. The carpet stain in the hallway was long gone, worn away by thousands of footsteps over the years. But Marcus still walked that same path every day, and he still remembered his arrogance, remembered Maria's courage, remembered the lesson that had changed everything. Stay humble, he would remind himself. Stay curious. Listen to everyone. Words to live by. Words that had transformed his company, his legacy, his life. Words he had learned from a cleaning lady who saw what 12 engineers could not see, who dared to try when trying seemed impossible, who proved that innovation comes from the most unexpected places. And somewhere in Guatemala, in the village of Santa Rosa de Lima, children played near a water purification system bearing Maria's name. They drank clean water, stayed healthy, went to school, dreamed their own dreams. They did not know the full story of the woman whose invention served them, but they lived the impact of her courage, her creativity, her compassion. And in the end, that was the only legacy that truly mattered.